much more than these things. He on us all. Thanks, this coat. Hi, Mother. Good.
Well, you didn't miss much. I couldn't believe when I saw that I had more a page and a half.
Well, and it's only 12 pages long.
It's 12 pages.
I've got to quit being in
No, you
Buddy's
don't.
class.
No, you don't.
I've got to quit being in Buddy's class.
Mine is bad. Or is it a bad influence?
Three. Come on 80, 60, 80,
We're on page
89.
80.
Well, I read all that.
90. We're on 90. We're down to meddling.
Well, yes. Jeannie, could you lead us in an opening prayer, please?
Yes, ma'am. Dear God, thank you for this day, and thank you for all the things that you've given us. Thank you for the wonderful rain that we've had recently. Thank you for the beautiful weather the last several days. Thank you for taking care of our family here and getting us all over our sicknesses and helping us all to get back to be able to worship together. Please watch over us as this season of colds and flus continues on, that everyone stays well and that we can all come together as often as we can. Thank you for Rita and her dedication to teaching us and to guiding us through this workbook. I ask that you be with all the ladies here as they go through their journey throughout the week. Just watch over them and their families. Thank you for your son that died on the cross for us. Thank you for all that he has done for us. Thank you for your grace and for your love. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. Well, I know some listen from home when unable to attend, and some catch up if they're out of town, but last week the machine was on, and so don't worry, you didn't miss much, because it didn't seem that we moved very far in the lesson. So page 90, and for those of you who were not here last week, I want to do a quick recap. 1 Peter 3:10, he who would love life and see good days, let him refrain his tongue from evil and his lips from speaking deceit. Those good days, that's what we want. That's our goal. Matthew 12:34, for out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaketh. Anita brought out that is a frightening verse if you think about it. That whatever you say comes from the heart. That's what's in your heart. And I don't know that we always want our heart to be as harsh sometimes as our words are. We've discussed God's description of the tongue. He described in this lesson, it was pointed out, it was described as choice silver and apples of gold. Then right after that, it was a world of iniquity set on fire of hell. And I don't know of any I don't know if there's any member of the body or actually of much else that has all the descriptions that God gave the tongue. Look on page 90, second paragraph. The Lord uses other terms to describe the tongue: the poison of asp, a burning fire, an unruly evil, adder's poison, full of deadly poison, the snare of the soul, like a sharp razor, and words as wounds. I don't know that we think of our careless talking in those terms. That's God's description of what we can do with our tongues. This lesson and the next lesson are both on the tongue. And both of these lessons, I think the scriptures and the study apply especially to us because we're talkers. We're talkers. And I had a thought when studying this that I am really going to try to follow. And I thought this. You know, in therapy, you always analyze the reason for something. So think of this. When you say something about someone or a situation, why are you saying it? Now just think about, what is your purpose in saying it? Whoever you're saying it to, is it going to help them be more holy? Is it going to build the reputation of whoever you're talking about? What is your purpose for giving that information? And I think if we look at what our purpose is, because sometimes this lesson is going to talk about the purpose of it. That sometimes we think it makes us look we're all in the know. We're all in. And so your purpose is to make you look better. It is something you're saying that may be not extremely complimentary of someone else, and then, but I tell you, you can take care of it then by saying, you know, we need to help her. What was your purpose in the first place? Why aren't you helping her? Why does spreading whatever you're saying, if it is not complimentary to someone else? What's your purpose? Does it make you look better? Particularly when you're critical of what someone else is doing. And I will tell you that in women, in churches where I have attended, not here, a little, where I have attended, whoever is doing the work is the one that gets the criticism. You're guilty that you're not doing it. Don't praise her for doing it. But you know, she really likes to look like she's running things, or she really wants to be in charge, or these little catty remarks that I have heard. What's your purpose? What do you do? And so as we go through this, I just really kind of want us to consider what we say, and especially what we post and what we put out for the world to see. Let's be careful about that business, because this in meddling, I love, we're fixing to read this, but I love this idea of us jumping to a confusion that's mentioned later in this chapter. So we're going to start, we'll go ahead and start up there with the tongue as an instrument of Satan, because that is the description then that we're going to get after that. So JD, would you start us with that and read down to talebearer, please.
The work of Satan was discussed in the previous lesson. Today, Satan works through people. This being true, can you imagine an instrument any more powerful than the human tongue? Anytime a tongue is used to accomplish a work or a wish of Satan, it is actually set on fire of hell. Meddling in other people's matters is condemned, and the tongue is always used to commit this sin. Study to do your own business. 1 Thessalonians 4:11. So much trouble is caused when people try to take care of other people's business, and in the long run, it brings great disease or great distress to the meddler. He that passeth by and meddleth with strife, belonging not to him, is like one that taketh a dog by the ears. Proverbs 26:17. But every fool will be meddling. Proverbs 20 verse 3.
So what is your definition, Anita, what is your definition of meddling?
We can't use the book.
I'm sorry?
We can't use the book. Well, I mean, basically getting in someone's business. If you think you know what is going on, then you say that to somebody else, and most of the time it is not what has happened or what is or what was said. So you're in somebody else's business that you need to be getting out, that you shouldn't be in.
Betty, what's the first thing you think of about meddling?
Getting into somebody else's business that you're not supposed to be in.
Well,
But sometimes you can meddle wanting to help somebody. But I don't know if that's called something else.
okay.
Like if I see Anita and they're having troubles, Anita, can I,
I'll come straighten y'all out. Betty
Along
Lou?
those lines, I was thinking it could be unwarranted advice.
Unsolicited. I like that word. That was my goal this year. I haven't accomplished it very well, but my goal this year was to quit offering unsolicited advice, because my career was offering advice, so everything you say, I've got something to say. And so I'm not going to be that person. I'm getting better at it, aren't I, Jay?
So good.
I'm scared. But I'm going to tell y'all the first thing I thought of on that, and then y'all see if I'm mother-in-law. Oh, she is all up in the business, particularly of young married. And there was a story I heard, and I'll try to do it quickly and share it with y'all, but it was one of the funniest things I ever saw. Said this woman ran into someone she knew that she hadn't seen lately. And she said, I hear both your son and your daughter are married. And she said, yes. My daughter has married the best husband you can imagine. He helps her with all of the housework. He takes care of her. He fixes her coffee in the mornings. He yaddy, yaddy, yaddy. Well, what about your son? Oh my. He's married somebody that thinks she ought to set up and wait for him to wait on her. That he ought to be helping with housework when he makes the job. Completely describe the difference. With the daughter, it was wonderful, but that daughter-in-law, she wasn't worth living. And so the first thing I thought of is, the first place that I see meddling has to do with meddling in your children's business. Think about it. The father wants the son to do this particular line of work or study or whatever, when that isn't what his interest is. Meddling. In the church, I think it has to do with, like Betty mentioned, that we want to be sure we're all up on joy and care and having a little spat. Do you know what that was about? No, but I'm going to tell you, I can ask Joy, because Joy talks to me. Well, let me see what Karen said. What are we doing? What are we doing? And I'll say again, since we have a visitor, that's not this group, except for Joy and Karen. The rest of it, we have very, very little effect.
And you see where she's sitting.
Yes.
Between me.
Yes. Right. And it's a good thing. Anyone else have anything on meddling?
My dad, as a child, as I was a child, taught us, if you couldn't say something good about someone, then don't say nothing at all.
Don't say anything at all. I've heard it all of my life.
All my life, I've heard.
Okay, the talebearer, Natasha, you want to read, down to number 2 on the next page.
The talebearer seldom realizes that her tongue is set on fire of hell, and that she is doing Satan's deadly work for him. Webster defines a talebearer as one who maliciously delights in spreading gospel scandal. God says, they shall not go up and down as a talebearer among thy people, Leviticus 19:16. Gossip is an insect. It has many legs and wings. It also has many tails, and all of them have stings. Talebearing is discussed more fully in the next chapter, but consider some things which can prompt a person to engage in this sin. 1. A desire for popularity, an effort to be liked. Many women feel that if they tell secret or confidential information to a friend, it will draw the friend closer. This often prompts one to speak things which should never be discussed and has been responsible for wounding so many hearts. The words of the talebearer are as wounds and go into the innermost parts of the belly. Some people think they have to tell everything they hear. They are like the woman who said, I hate to repeat gossip, but after all, what else can you do with it? And the everlasting tragedy is, the Lord will not forgive her unless she repents. It takes a person a year to learn to talk, and sometimes takes a lifetime to learn when to do it.
There was an old show a long time ago called Hee Haw. And there was somebody on it that would say all the time, I never repeat gossip, so listen close the first time. And as this says, what else can you do with it? What else can you do with this gossip? And then sometimes I see this at the end of an article that I read that comes up on my phone. And here's all these people's comments down here on what this person ought to do. They don't even know that person. What do you mean what they... Tale-bearing. But it is the pastime of our society. There's not anything that happens in Stephenville that you don't know. Because it's there. It's publicized. It's, you know, which I'm not saying that I care that you know everything that goes on in Stephenville. But do you comment on it? are you? And then do you say, hey, did you read that? Did you know so-and-so did so-and-so? What is it to you? What is your personal interest? You don't even know these people. But the tale, if we can tell a good tale, it does tend to help us. So what do you think about that, Brenda? Do you know talebearers?
Sure.
Is listening to the tale the same as telling it?
Yes.
That's kind of hard to digest. That's kind of hard to digest. That, because we do listen. Are we reading? I keep going back to the second paragraph on page 90. The poison of asp, a burning fire, an unruly evil, adder's poison, full of deadly poison, the snare of the soul, like a sharp razor, and words as wounds. Those are God's descriptions. Anyone have a comment? Tash, you have a comment on what you read?
No, I mean, just like Brenda said, we all know people that, you know, that are talebearers, and we just have to be so careful when they start to say something. We're like, you know what? Let's just leave it right there. I don't need to know, whatever this is.
Julie was here last week, and I was really proud of her because there's a situation in Amarillo, and it seems that she went to the same hairdresser. Anyway, this hairdresser started to say something about this couple, and Julie just said, I just said, when she started, when I heard the names, I said, she is a friend of mine. I have known her for years, and I can assure you nothing that you're fixing to say is true. And I thought, that takes some, because we'll say, well, let's just see what she's going to say. That's within us. That's how we do. And I don't know how many times in the last couple of weeks I've read that second paragraph, because I just can't imagine a description other than of false teachers. I can't imagine as much descriptive terminology that God used on one day, and how damning the information that He gave. Can you read yours? Do with that too, and read down to envy. Envy on the next page.
The talebearer and the tale hearer are often motivated by their own sense of guilt. A wicked doer giveth heed to falsehood, and a liar will hear to a naughty tongue. Proverbs 17:4. Many people who are not living right delight in harming those who are. David was the target of such talk. Hide me from the secret counsel of the wicked, for the insurrection of the words of iniquity, who whet their tongues like a sword, and bend their bows to shoot out and their arrows, even bitter words, and that they shoot in secret at the perfect. Suddenly they shoot at him and fear not. Psalm 6:4. intentions, the evil desire to harm the righteous. It was done with words, and they did it in secret behind the backs of the righteous.
The description again, like a sword, shoot with arrows. And did you know that we keep giving this saying that we say to kids, sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me. There's nothing further from the truth. Words do hurt. And when you think that words are what saves your soul, words matter. The Word of God can save you. Words harm. Words do great harm. And in fact, I'm thinking that there are times when we talk about sticks and stones, I think that even a parent that is maybe a little too aggressive and spanks a child or does something physically to them, I can tell you from listening to years of people talking, none of that, no spankings, not even beatings, did what words did. You're stupid, you can't get anything right, you don't do anything. I mean, when you think those hurts with a child stay forever. They don't, you know too, Eugene, that it never goes away. And they may laugh and say, well, my dad gave me spanking, but I deserved every one of them. In fact, I've heard Betty say that very thing. But those words. And so when we realize that within us we have a member, our tongue is set on fire by hell. It can cut, it can hurt, it can do a great deal of damage. Well, I did all that talking. Anybody else got something to say on it? Okay, next time I'll let y'all do it.
You know, I know an adult now that deals with self-confidence because of his father. You know, that his father was always something, you don't know how to do that. I can't believe you don't know what tool that is. I can't believe you know, just constantly growing up. And his self-confidence is zilch. I mean, he doesn't, he needs to have somebody tell him, it's okay. You're doing okay. And it's very hard because of what he dealt with growing up. So,
I've talked often about a grandson that I have that you all know. And he is 41 years old. And there's hardly a conversation that he doesn't make some reference to his childhood. And never get over it. You can tell him, I don't care how many times you tell him how great he is, there's still that back here, what I was taught when I was little. And they say in the mind, which y'all know I'm all about the mind, that in those studies that they do, that you can take a child with a high IQ and tell him how stupid he is and how this and how that, and he can't perform because of what Anita said, no self-confidence. You can take one with much lesser IQ and tell him all the time how great he is. He'll outperform every time. I want you to think about if you go into a store that has books, I know, go Dolly's, that has books. no, really a store that has books. The more books on the shelf about self-improvement, motivation, goal setting, how to, the market is endless. Now, Eric was somewhere last week, and he sent me this video, and Dr. Kevin Elko was speaking to that group, and I was so jealous I could hardly stand it. Because words, and it's words, and Elko does the teams like Alabama and some of these great winners, and he speaks motivational words to that team before they go on the field. I'm just saying, what we could use these words to build up. We should be encouraging to one another all the time. All the time. Because words count. Okay, now I'm through with that.
Well, just as we read, it's Satan is accomplishing what he wants to by using us
To
and
use the words.
to use those words. And so, it's just that we have to fight that much harder against the evil of the world, to not do all this. And that's
And we should really try to replace everything with something. If somebody says something to you, even though it's not a sinful thing, but says something that's diminishing in any way to someone and say, yeah, but I think they're the greatest this that I've ever known. Or did you know, but I'm just always amazed about how they can do this or that. I mean, we can turn that conversation to something positive about them instead of saying, yeah, I know, I've always thought she was like that. No.
I think a lot of times that people do that because that's oftentimes the way they feel about themselves. And I think if you change your narrative about how you talk to yourself, that if you replace well, I didn't finish this today, or I wasn't good enough at that, or maybe I didn't fix dinner on time, or maybe I didn't get the kids a bath tonight, instead replace it with, well, what did I do? Well, I took time to play before we went to bed, or, I did do a load of laundry today, or I did, accomplish a task at work, and change it with a positive, like you're saying, instead of a negative. And I think if we can change that within ourselves, then we see that not to give it to others.
And Eugene, I think we better listen to that, just me and you. No, we're not talking about somebody else. Me and Eugene, we're just talking about ourselves and each other. But maybe we ought to look at what we did. But it's kind of hard to find something.
But there's always tomorrow.
Start over in the morning.
And if there's not a tomorrow, we didn't need to do it first.
Exactly. Well, and I the other thing I think is, Jeannie mentioned the self-talk. If you don't talk to yourself, you're missing out on a great conversation. I mean, in the mornings, you should think about the positive opportunities you have today. Will you do it or not, Eugene? What you could do, that would be good. And then at night, to thank God for the things you were able to do today that you could consider as good. And I've told y'all my self-talk gets a little rough sometimes, because in the mornings when I wake up, I think, shut up and get up, you'll feel better. Because otherwise you can fall into that trap Well, I don't feel good. Well, we all don't feel good. So, I love this subject because it's what we need to think about. Brenda, do you want to read? Start with envy down to hasty words.
This principle is forcefully seen in a fable concerning a jackal.
No, up one.
I'm sorry?
Up one, number 3. Start reading 3.
Envy is usually the basic cause of talebearing. The slanderer never speaks against an inferior. In real worth, she or he has no inferiors, but is so blinded as to be unaware of it. But the envious heart is painfully conscious of superiors and delights in using words as instruments to try to whittle them down. David was an object of the poison tongue of envy, as studied in the above passage. The principle is forcefully seen in the fable concerning a lion and a jackal. The jackal was constantly berating the lion to all the other animals, enumerating all his faults and failures, trying in every way to destroy the respect which the animals had for the lion. One day the deer asked the jackal, "Has the lion ever harmed you in any way?" "No," replied the jackal. "Hasn't he befriended you in times when you needed a friend?" "Yes," admitted the jackal. "Then why are you always saying bad things about the lion?" "Because," said the jackal, "I'm a jackal and he's a lion."
And that's, there's a saying going around right now that has become a very popular thing in talking things. And that is, when someone tells you by their speech, when someone tells you who they are, believe them. You know, we have signs about every person we meet. You know, their speech, the same, of course she was meaning it in a different vein, but like the maid said to Peter, your speech betrays you. Did you know, if you know what that person is, if they're good for you, seek time with them. But if they bring you down, stay away from them. When they tell you who they are, believe them. So what do you think then, Brenda? What do you think envy, how would you describe how envy is within the talk, in the words?
It's really indescribable in a lot of ways, but then you stop and think that I think it has to be how your heart feels, or you know, it comes from the heart. I mean, I can't explain.
Out of the abundance of the heart, man speaketh.
I think we're taught to be that way from a child. We're taught that there are different classes of people, that we rank differently because of income or because of our clothing or because of the car that we drive. I think that we look at people in different ways because of their jobs. And it's taught from a very, very early age. And I think that you have to break those boundaries, and you have to be willing to step out of that and to look at people as a person, not as a class. And that's the fault of our society.
Absolutely, absolutely. A feeling, there is a difference between jealousy and envy, but it's a thin line, because I want what you've got and I don't want you to have it. Well, that does apply, just like you said, whether it's the car or the clothes or the whatever.
Boyfriend or the girlfriend.
We fall into that. And in our schools, oh my, they want to be in with this crowd and in with that crowd. Not what's going to benefit their character, their goodness, but to be in and be popular. Betty?
Working in the cafeteria, we've seen a lot of that with the kids. Because some of the kids would rather go hungry than to be on free lunches. And some of that goes back to when we had tickets and buttons and all that. Now they just do it in a computer. But they had rather go hungry because of the way other people treat them.
If they're on free lunches.
If they're on free lunches.
Well, it goes beyond just kids wanting to be angry, so to speak. Because when Eric's line of work and with the people we have to associate with, there's a couple of them that just, they latch on to one another and they want to be that everybody to, hey, look at me, which they're not, but still they're trying to sell this to draw that attention to themselves. So, I mean, the being in the in-group, I think, there's not an age limit for that, because I have seen that firsthand, and I'm 57, and we've been in this position for 8 years, and it's a humdinger sometimes.
Well, and I'm sure you run into this, because we do, that we are kind of, when we go and do things with Billy's work, that we're not drinkers and we're not partiers, and so, you know, we don't really fit in with everybody else. And so at first it was very awkward, and it was very tense when we were around people. Of course, now they're like, yeah, you know, don't ask them, they don't drink. Yeah, don't ask them, they're not gonna go. But you know, it's continuous. I mean, it's constant.
And the way that we respond to what you're talking about, like in the business world, reminds me of my two sons. One, they were together at a business function, and one was called on to stand and kept trying to sit down, and the company guy who said, keep standing. I want y'all to look at him and see what he's doing and do it. And the other son said, and he just kept trying to sit down, and he said, Mother, I'd have been standing on the table. And that's how we are. Some are humble, some are able to handle things. But too many people, like you said, want to be seen as these, like Natasha mentioned too, that want to be look at me kind of people. God doesn't want you to be a look at me kind of person, except look at them, how holy they are, how righteous they are, how good they are, not how popular they are, how rich they are. It is this mind thing, girls, you know how that is. We only have 2 minutes, so we're not going to start on that mind thing. But if you think about the fact that the mind and the heart are the same, God was not talking about a blood dot. The heart, the mind, and how you set your mind. Then think of that scripture that we quoted a couple of times here. Out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. So it's, where's your heart? What do you want? Do you want to be popular with man or with God? No man can serve 2 masters. Ladies, mark hasty words and Joy counted the pages and there's just 12, so we ought to be,
There may not be.
well, thank you.
We got to turn a page, so.
Well, I know, I'm gonna drop out of Buddy's class and see if I can get better.
No, you've already called it now.
Well, there's just so much here to talk about.
It's okay.
It doesn't matter, good conversation.
We agree.
Well, but I'm thinking, did they honestly think you could cover that in one lesson?
That's a lot of stuff, you're fine.
Yeah. Thank you, ladies, for your attention.
If it'll make you feel.
There's no cure for that.
Takes these classes. And it's
Oh, thank you, Joy. Yeah. Yeah. I thought it should expect to be cover all that in one lesson. Yeah.
And it's $1,000. Here's another page. And
80,000.
which is the one that you should be.
Look at me, I'd be up on the tree.
I'm glad to see you. You look very pretty.
No, I almost said something.
Because mine's at 9. I mean,
Oh.
how come you wasn't on?
That's just, I think,
Yes, yes. But don't worry.
Well, because